Welcome to Getting Real with the Costas. This special episode series will be an exclusive. Here, both me and my wife talk about the ins and outs of running a business, being married, developing our money mindset, our polarizing family dynamics, and taking big risks in our lives. You may have always wondered what relationships we have with our friends and family. How can we actually balance our work and our life routine? You may be wondering how we communicate as a couple, or even what our health goals and struggles are that come up in our day-to-day jazz. Well, you are in luck because we get to talk about all this personally and more. Completely unscripted. Welcome to Getting Real with the Costas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Getting Real with the Costas. Can't believe this is episode 7 already. We are flying by these episodes, but we definitely hope you guys are enjoying these. Today, we're going to be talking all about family.
That's right. Family relationship, family dynamics. I think it's something that we want to talk about for a long time because especially in today's environment, there are a lot of people, a lot of friends and colleagues that we talk to that don't have really great relationships with their family. They might have opposing political views. They might not talk to them a lot. And family, at least for me and Lorna, is something that is really, really important. We have very, very high and strong family values, but I think it's because of the way we grew up and the things that we experienced through our family. So what we really want to do with this is go through and share our experience of what our family life was like, the types of experiences that we did that made us appreciate family, and really walk through why having family connections or people who are like family to you is something that's super important.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to start? Or you want to start with some family stuff?
So I can go.
Okay. Okay, so I want to know because our relationships with the family and the way that we speak to our families is really, really different. Like I'm someone who's like, I'm always contacting my mom. I'm like, she's kind of like my unofficial best friend, right? And I know that you kind of have approached the relationship with your family a little bit differently. So maybe share with them how the relationship with your family has kind of grown up, like how you guys talk and just the way that you communicate with your family in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, let me just. All right, we just got a phone call, so we're gonna just leave off where we don't know where we left off.
Yeah, that's fair, and actually we'll share with it. So we've shared in a couple of the Getting Real with the Costas podcast that we now have a rental property. So we found a tenant to fully fill our other space there. So a lot of the times communication between tenants and stuff like that, that's basically we had someone reach out just to ask, who was moving in, all this other stuff. But that's the joys, right? I think through this process, one thing I never recognized, and then we'll go back to family, was like the amount of conversations that we would have to, have between people. So,
right.
But that's okay because that's what we signed up for at the end of the day, which is fine. So, okay. So what we were talking about was family in terms of communication. So I was explaining that a lot of the times when I'm talking to my family, I was the person who was always present. I'm always speaking to my mom. My mom is my unofficial best friend, and our relationships were always very, very close. They're very centered, and we had a lot of communication. And I'm curious as to what your family dynamic looked like with your communication and how you spoke to your family.
Yeah, I mean, we were always like a tight-knit family. And like I tell my mom literally everything. And I have a sister as well too. And we were close, but we never really like did anything together. Like we were really like never went out to the movies together or the mall together. Like I more so did that with like my mom. But I remember as a kid, like I was dancing when I grew up. Like I was a competitive dancer. So like family meals at the table were not really a thing like Monday to Friday because I'd be at the dance studio until like 8 o'clock at night. My mom or my dad would pick me up And then, I'd be eating in the car at like 8 o'clock at night. And then the day kind of repeated itself. But we've always been like super close. But I think what I've actually realized now, just kind of getting older, was saying I love you wasn't like something that we said like every single day, or you know what I mean? Like I'm just like, and it's interesting because like now that I guess just have like more wisdom or whatnot, like I am now intentionally trying to say that more often. Like even, I called my parents the other day and like I said at the end of the call, but like normally we would not really like say that as like a huge thing. Um,
In a family dynamic, is that something that you feel is needed for someone to always vocalize? Or do you feel that that is the way, like everyone has a different love language,
mhm.
right? And I feel like with me, right, you tend to be the person who's
Yeah.
like very vocal and we like to
Yeah.
spend a lot of time and words of affirmation,
I
right?
think it's just
So,
different.
or
Like
is that like,
I say I love you to
mhm,
you like 900 times a day.
yep.
Right? But like I don't know, to my family, I think hmm I don't know why. It's kind of weird, but like I I guess because like our relationship started off that way. Like, you know what I
Okay.
mean? Like when we started dating, I love you. Like we always just kind of said that to ourselves. So it's almost just like ingrained. But when it came to my family, like we obviously said I love you, but we would say like good night, like love you, like things like that. But it
Mhm,
was never like, every time I called my mom, okay, bye, love you. You know what I mean?
mhm.
And I think when you started saying that more often to your brother more recently,
Yeah.
then that kind of was like, oh, like maybe I should be saying that more often.
Yeah. And it's so strange because I only started doing that, and by recent, like I mean it's the last really 2 months, and that's upon learning with kind of everything that I've done in the men's group and stuff that I've been learning about. But for me, when I look at my family dynamic, we always had a lot of communication, and it was easy for me to tell my mom I love you because it's just, again, I think from a mother to any child, that's very, very easy. But my father has a lot of very old school traditions. And instead of saying the words "I love you," because maybe I've probably only heard that maybe 20 or 30 times my entire life, right? I actually don't see that as a bad thing because
Yeah.
he showed and demonstrated to me the way that he loved me, always
Mm-hmm.
showing up for, like I remember as a young kid, like doing the soccer games, being the just doing things for me or
Yeah.
teaching me how to do something or actually holding me accountable were the ways that he learned to say I love you. And even saying, like, I now understand by looking through his eyes when he says, like, I'm so proud of you guys, or I can't believe all that you guys have accomplished. And when he goes and talks about us to other people, that is his way of saying I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think, to me, like, I've never needed those words,
Well,
more like the, which I know you don't either too, but
yeah.
like that was never a family thing for us, right?
Yeah.
And while me and my mom were very, very close, me and my brother, because he was always younger than me, he's always been like a part of our friend group, a part of our life
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like it's just always been kind of as he grew up. And now, he's obviously a best friend to me because now, like, 4 years growing up when you're like 16 is like totally different.
Yeah.
But like 4 years when you're 32, no, I'm 31. I don't know. One of
You're
the two.
30, you're
No, I'm not.
31.
No, I'm
31.
31. Yeah,
31.
31 turned 32, right? Like a 4 year difference at that age is really nothing. It doesn't mean anything. So when I look at that stuff, I'm like, oh, okay, like it's we now relate on so many different levels. And that being said, we're almost two different people. But my family dynamic was really around my family teaching me effort. So study hard, get a job, do things that are difficult, and your effort is always going to be rewarded. And 9 times out of 10, that was true. Whatever effort I put into my life, it ended up coming back to us. And that was kind of our relationship.
Yeah, I think like I learned a lot of like hard work from both of my parents, but like I grew up and like my mom was a teacher and she would always be up at like 5 a.m. She would work out beforehand and then she would get to work at like 7 a.m. and she wouldn't start until I think like 8:30. And then she would come home and then she'd be like, spending time marking her kids, projects or whatever it was. So I always saw like that, you know, dedication and that level of care. And I definitely like picked that up for sure. Like I started working out in the morning super early, getting up early, and just like having that work ethic. I think something that I got from my dad was like my perfectionist tendencies and like the anxiety because my dad's very like particular with everything. And I mean that's not like necessarily like a bad thing, like it is obviously like,
I think your dad's level of organization is incredible.
oh my
You
gosh, you
can
guys, in
find
our garage. Okay, first
the
of all,
whole
in our
house. I wouldn't
garage,
even say
yeah,
the
the
garage.
whole house,
Yeah.
like no matter what, okay, the dishwasher, there's literally a little tab that says dishes clean, and he printed it off from the computer, and it's like a little like tag or whatever, and he like puts it on the counter when the dishes are clean. And there's a tab for like scissors, there's a tab for like old rags. Like you go into the garage and there's like labels for everything. You go into our basement and our storage room, there's literally labels for absolutely everything, full files for everything. And obviously, like it's really good that he's super organized, but
He should have almost been an accountant because everything
yeah,
there's not a single thing that's out of place, and the single
yeah,
thing that if you were looking for it, you're like, oh, where would I find this? You would find it there, and it's in its right place.
yeah.
Like I really do
But
think it's a
it's
good
so
skill.
interesting how our traits get like passed on from parents. Like I
Mhm.
never really realized that because I used to, even like my mom, like I always say, like my mom has always been a worry wart. And something that I think I struggled with in terms of my relationship with my mom at the time, obviously not anymore, but like, she's always been like a worry wart and always like, hey, like, make sure you have this. And like, hey, do you need this? Like, hey, and like double checking. And I would get so annoyed, but I realized that I do that to the people that I care about. So my mom would always be like, hey, make sure you have lunch. Like, do you need anything else? Like, hey, did you pack your sweater? Like, all these things. And then I would get so annoyed. But then when it comes to you, I'm like, you're going away for like 10 minutes and I'm like, oh, do you need this? Like, hey, did you call this person? Like,
Yeah.
I am definitely like that worry war. And it's so funny how we get triggered by the things that like
I think
we're
it's like
doing.
when we see the mirror that reflects a little bit of ourselves,
We don't
we're
like
like, oh
it.
darn, right?
I do
And
this, yeah.
yeah, so for my parents, there are two things that my so both my parents have been working full time forever. And my father's a crane operator, so I used to, you guys know I used to be a crane operator in the past as well. And he is a man's man. He's the kind of guy who's like, if you need something done, I'm gonna do it. He's very direct. There's not a lot of, conversational feelings, but it's more like you put your head down, you get the work done, and you reap what you sow. Pretty much that was my dad's mentality. And my mom working full time was always that person who, like, she to this day takes care of all of the back end stuff, like, and that's where
Mm,
I think I got to take care of all the back end stuff. Not that like we split all the, like, the cleaning, the cooking, that stuff. We're pretty good at doing 50-50, but my mom literally does everything.
mm.
She cooks, she cleans, she pays the bills, she does the stuff with the accounts. Like, I truly don't think that my dad knows where he just, like, the bills are paid.
And
And
it's so crazy because it's the complete opposite for me. Like my mom knows nothing about like the bills and stuff like that. Like my dad does all the bills. Like my mom does obviously like the cleaning and the cooking, but my dad takes care of like the rest of the things. And I think, I saw that growing up. So like I saw my mom do like the laundry, the cooking, the cleaning, and having no idea about like bills or like bank stuff. And then when I grew up, it's almost like I went to the bank with like my dad, or my dad did everything for me,
Mhm.
because we were like, my mom was just kind of so used to that. And then I think like when we started dating, it was like the same thing. Like I just assumed like you were going to take care of like the taxes, the bills, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And then I was going to do, the laundry and the cooking and the cleaning and all the things, right? It's just
Which
interesting.
is actually, it's one of those things where I don't actually mind those things.
Yeah.
Like I'm the type of person who really, and I think eventually that this is what'll happen is I'll be that guy in the background that takes care of all the stuff. But like I like having the background conversations, putting things together, talking to our accountants, other things like that. But really it was something that I learned almost out of necessity, because for our parents, like none of our parents, even on your side, nobody really came from business, right?
Yeah.
And although they taught us really good things, like my father taught me discipline, my mother taught me, always about that I should save, and that I can't, it's stupid to spend more than what you make, and they taught me some really really great values. They really couldn't uh they couldn't afford, and by afford I don't mean financially, because I had anything I wanted, they gave me. It's almost like they couldn't afford to take risks because their
Mm-hmm.
jobs were so stable. Like
Yeah.
my father worked so hard just to get a stable job that he took a job he cannot stand. Like if you ask him,
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I do not like crane
It's
operating.
ready to retire.
Yeah, maybe he did at one point, but like he does not now. But he took the job for stability for me and for my brother and for my mom. And my mom, the same thing. When she took a job, and she literally worked for that company for 30 years before it closed. Like she was going to be there for life, a lifer. And that stability meant that they were so focused on providing for us that none of them really thought of like what could be or what is next or what is the potential to that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And in growing up, it really gave me the ability to be like, oh wow, I can actually do something on my own. But that was like completely foreign to my parents,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like almost their mentality and their headspace and growing the way that their family was like what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to like, for them, I think success was graduate from college, get an established job where you're working 40 hours a week, and
Mm-hmm.
start a family. That's what success was to them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think like, you know, even like my parents, it was a very like standard thing as well too. It's like 9 to 5 job or whatever. Like my mom was a teacher or whatever. But like I think then when we started our own business, sometimes it's like, like do you guys know what you're doing? Or like, you know
Oh
what
yeah,
I mean? Like
all the time.
of course, right? Because they didn't really grow up that way. Um, but
I will say though, your family is incredibly, our family gives support to us in two different ways.
mhm.
And I think that's something that's really important to talk about, is like your parents have this 1,000% belief that anything we set our minds to, we cannot fail.
You know why? Because when I grew up and I said that I was going to do something, I did it. Like when I told my mom that, like, or my parents that, like, I was going to go to university, I went to university. When I told them that I was going to become a, health coach, I became a health coach. When I said that I was going to start my own business, I like, and like everything, like even like the little things of like, hey, I'm going to my friend's house and, like, I'm going to be back at like 9 o'clock. I'd be back at 9 o'clock. So like I've always had so much trust with my family. And I think that they just know that like I'm gonna be okay. Like
Mhm.
I was never like a troublemaker growing up. And like my parents just saw that like every single thing that I said I was gonna do, I just did it. And they always tell me, like, you're gonna be fine no matter what. And I just know that.
Mhm. Do you think that they have that same attitude towards, so like what I'm hearing is that a lot of the reason why they have this high level of trust is because you gave them evidence to trust you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of people, that's how relationships are built, is the evidence aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if people know, or if they don't know, right? You got a sister, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they feel the same way or have that same level of trust that way?
I mean, obviously my sister is completely different than me.
Mhm.
Right. So like, you know, again, like I don't really feel the need to like really share in terms of like too much like personal stuff like behind the scenes or whatnot. But I think it's like, I went to college and I graduated. You know what I mean? Like I did the things. And I think sometimes when you try something and there's nothing wrong with it not working, you know what I mean? Like I even went to university, and after 3 years, I was like, this program's not for me. Right. So, like, of course, like, I'm not like the perfect child or whatnot.
Yep.
But I think it's different for like, my sister growing up, she didn't really know what she wanted to do. So she tried this, and then she tried this, and then she tried this, and then she tried this. Right. And sometimes it's difficult to support somebody who doesn't really know what they really want. And it's nobody's fault. It's kind of hard to support somebody who is kind of in like that limbo of like, I'm not really sure what I want to be doing.
And I appreciate you sharing that. And obviously, it's like everything that we say on this podcast, in getting real with you guys, it's really so you can understand and resonate and grow within yourself as well too. Like Lorna said, like even with family relationships, there's no good or no bad. It just is. And it's how we do and make these changes that move forward. And the reason why I asked you that is like my parents, so like your parents were 1,000% supportive. My parents were very, very supportive. However, there was a lot of things that they've experienced in their past that made them always question whether or not that was possible, like whether or not starting a business was possible. Like my father, he went into business with his family. It didn't work out. They ended up selling the business to somebody else, and the person they sold it to actually made the business really successful, right? And I don't know how that affects him. I don't actually really think he thinks about it anymore, but he tried, right? And whenever someone tries something and maybe it doesn't quite work out, with anything in life, not just business, you develop this thing where you're like, is this now possible? Anytime you fail something, you say to yourself, is this now possible? Right. And my parents, when I went to start the business, my mom thought I was a lunatic. She's like, what are you talking about? You don't even know anything about starting a business. And unlike you that provided evidence, I actually have the worst in terms of evidence. I always struggled in school. I was the low 70s, like low 80s. That was my range.
That's
And
not struggle.
no, okay, you say that. For a test, I had to study 3 weeks just to get like 76.
I
Right?
I succeeded in school, side note, because I literally memorized everything.
Well, so here's the thing, right? So like I had to
That's what
try
I
really
studied.
hard.
Yeah.
Okay. I failed grade 10 math. Okay. A lot of people don't know that I had to do summer school, which is totally fine. Okay. I took 2 summer schools. I needed a science or whatever. And they were like, you got to take a year behind because there was a transfer test. I didn't make the transfer test for that. So I had to do those things as well too. And I really, really struggled to get like mediocre on these levels. And then when I became a mechanic, I got my license, but I was like, I don't like this job. I then became a crane operator and was like, this isn't for me. So, in trying all of these things, I mean, I share the same thing with you, which is like, I never gave up. And they always were like, you can put your mind to do it. But I never really gave anybody evidence that, like, hey, I can totally do this and be a business owner.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, you're out of your damn mind, but they still supported me. And I think that is such an important power with having a family member, even friends who like back you, is like all they need to know is what you're willing to do for them to back you. They backed us with the online business,
Yep.
or sorry, with the mobile. They backed us with the studio. So my parents were the ones who co-signed a lease with me and Lorna. I was
As
dating Lorna.
boyfriend and girlfriend.
That's right. And I just knew that my parents were like, if you need it, we will help you. Right. That being said, there was always a lot of questions, right? Where it was like, hey, do you know what you're doing? Are you going to do this? And I know that they asked the questions out of concern But for me, I was like, oh, you just gotta trust me, you
Yeah.
know? And that was a big thing. But I felt like through all of those challenges, I worked really hard to prove that things could be done. And now I feel like my parents are where your parents are at, where they're like, anything you say you're gonna do, you're gonna do it,
Yeah.
which is good, you
And
know?
sometimes, like, I mean, we're doing a lot of like big things at like a young age. And sometimes I like question myself, like, should I be, teaching my sister this, or should I be, you know,
Mhm.
teaching my family this, or, and sometimes like, like you learn all these like things about, we've grown a lot as humans, right? About like triggers and like, even anxiety. Sometimes like, people in my family struggle with anxiety, and I'm like, I'm a certified breathwork facilitator. Like maybe I should like, be spending more time and like, doing this work and like helping my family. But I think what it comes down to is like, like people have to want to change. And also like, what am I trying to say? Like people like, just because like we're learning and growing and learning a bunch of stuff doesn't mean like we have to push that onto our family. Like even in our relationship, when like I started learning a lot of like healing modalities, or like even when I've had like business coaches and I'm like, oh, like this is the way to do it. And like sometimes, I would like, share something with you like so excitingly, but also it's like I'm excited for me, but doesn't mean I have to like, you know,
Mhm. Absolutely. I think it is about establishing what, like, we've had a lot of conversations on, like, I wish that almost my family invested together. I wish
yeah.
that they invested together like a lot of Oriental families do, where all the brothers and sisters pool money. And there's something about, not about my family, but about European families, that people always believe that they need to do everything by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is how we grew up, not realizing that we can all help each other become successful, but there needs to be trust that's involved in that,
Yeah.
right? And that's a key aspect of it. But yeah, it's interesting that you say that you want to teach your family and help share that, that's something I really hope that I want to
Well,
share, with my brother at least, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, just like with everything that we learned, like even when I was, a health coach, and, all the things like, or like when I was a personal trainer, and like my sister would be like, I want to start working out. But it's like when we also do this every single day, and then it's like we go and see our family, it's like we don't want to, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's, so yeah.
Yeah, there's like a natural boundary that's almost there in terms of that stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But I mean, all in all, I mean, like, I think we really do have close relationships with our family. But I think what I've noticed, like, even moving away from our family, is like, I am fine being here and having my family be there. Like I was used to like moving away for school. So
Mhm.
I was fine with like, calling my parents maybe like once a week or whatever. But having my own space. But I realized like with you, like you're so close with like especially like your mom and like
Mhm.
your family. And you know, like I think for you it's more like, I think it was also harder for you to like move here and make that transition. Of course you can speak for yourself, but
Mhm.
like for me, I don't know, like I was so used to it. Like I'm close with my family, but also like I like they understand that I need my space, and I also definitely need my space. But I think it was just a little bit tougher for you because you were so like close with your family.
I agree. It wasn't tough to come here. I think what was tough was to change the way that I was communicating with my family,
Yeah.
because we were the type of people that used to spend every day on the couch together. And I would spend a few evenings a week talking with my mom until like 11:30 at night, right? And then to go from that to like nothing, and then have to explain to my parents like, hey, our communication's going to change. And now
Yeah.
everything is worked out and it's fine, we've ironed everything out. But it is a big shift, I agree with you, right? And it's a big change for them as well, right? And then I think one of the things that unconsciously happened is, like, you and I had a lot of changes super quick, where we bought the house, where
Mm-hmm.
where we got took care of the studio and finished up with that. We moved over here, right? And I feel like my parents saw that, and then they saw all the changes, and then now that like I'm gone, they were just like, let's hyper focus on my brother, and they were like, yeah, and like I
Well, same thing's
feel.
happening with my sister. Like, my sister's home and your brother's
Mhm,
home, so it's like
yeah.
obviously like the focus is going to be on
I
them,
feel
right?
like though it's way harder now for my brother, not because they're doing anything different, but because you almost have like a magnifying glass on you. And my brother, guys, and maybe I'll have him on my podcast because he used to be a coach as well. He's phenomenal. Um, he is so intelligent. He has the ability, like this is the kind of guy who wouldn't have to study for a test, gets 90. Like
Yeah.
he's his application is so high, his dedication is so high, he's laser focused on things, and the most important thing for him is like he's trying to find what he likes to do, which I tell people all the time, don't just settle for something, right? And my parents, have that ability to help him do that, which is great. But it's like I don't think that they compare him to me. I think maybe though, with me not there, they're just always like, "How's Michael? Where's Michael? How's Michael
Yeah.
doing?" And I know my brother's like just
Yeah.
slowly being eaten by the attention,
Well,
you
it's so
know.
interesting because like I've always felt like my parents were so much closer to my sister because like for me, I've always, like I said, I needed my own space and I was like very independent. I went off to school. I moved out because I went to school and like my sister was always home. And, like we had different lifestyles. Like I was always like very, very healthy. So, like, when my parents wanted to like go out or whatever, like, I would never really go or like it would just be different. So I always felt like my parents were a lot more closer with my sister, but I feel like what I have is like success, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? But like I feel like I don't know. Like I feel like my parents are closer with my sister just because they've spent more time with her. Um and like I've always just been like my own little independent island over here like you
We're
know
an island
yeah,
together,
but I feel like
right?
I don't know, like our brother and sister are so similar, and
They
now like I
are.
feel
They
like
are.
because the attention's like all on your brother now because he's home.
Mhm.
I feel like the same thing like happens with my sister too,
Yeah.
but
And that's tough because I also don't like, one of the things about having a family dynamic is like you can't compare what you went through with another sibling. You also can't compare how your parents treated you then to how they treat you now,
mhm,
because there's so many different changes in life
yeah.
where like again, I mean, like my parents grew up and you know again, they gave me everything that I could have ever asked for. Never,
Yeah.
never went hungry, always had clothes, everything was totally fine. Like there was at no point was I was like, we're poor. Like none of that stuff ever crossed my mind, right? We never really talked about emotional stuff. We never really had kind of deep conversations, really, because I think like they didn't know how. They didn't know how, and I only discovered really how to do that like this year, right? And I yeah.
No, I was just gonna, sorry, I just had like this
Yeah.
burning question. Like, it's so interesting. Like, I want to ask you, whenever like something bad happened,
Mhm.
who would you call first? Or like if either something bad happened or like you wanted to do something, but like you didn't know if they would say yes, who would you call first?
So there's actually three different scenarios to that. Okay. If I called something and I wanted it, it would be my mom. If something bad happened to me, it would be my dad. Or if it was an emergency, because although my dad would get mad, there would be no questions asked. It was like, you need help? Cool. And that was it. So it was like, if there was an emergency, dad. If I needed something, mom. Okay. And if I wanted to skate something by the other person, then I would ask my dad first. Okay. Because my dad was the kind of person who was like, did your mom say okay? And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah. She said it was good. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. It's so
And then it
interesting
changed.
because for me,
Mhm.
like whenever something like that happened, I would always call my dad because my mom would have a literally she would probably pass out on the phone. Like she would literally have a heart
Oh
attack.
my
Like I remember
God.
this one time, like I never got a speeding ticket. I never got in any accidents or anything like that. But like there was that we actually was just starting to date and I texted you first. I don't even think I texted my parents. But like this person behind me uh no, was it the person behind me? No, I think like I like bumped into somebody like but like nothing really happened. But like um I was like, oh my God, I don't want to call my parents because like I know my mom's gonna freak out and my dad's probably gonna be like, what the heck? So like I remember calling you, but like I would always call my dad for things like that. And then whenever it would be like I wanted like a new toy or like whatever, I would ask my mom and like I felt so bad, honestly. Like she was a teacher, she was so exhausted, and it'd be like 7 o'clock at night. I'd be like, "Mom, we have to go buy this new thing," and she would literally take me. Like it's crazy. But the same thing would
Mhm.
happen if I wanted to like go to a friend's house. I would like tell my dad that I was going, because he would be like, "Okay, whatever." And like I'd be like, "Yeah, mom said it was fine too," and then like I
Yeah.
would just be able to go because my dad didn't really ask a lot of questions either. My mom's like, "Who, where, what, how, when." All
It's
the questions.
so interesting how, as young kids and as teenagers, we could read without even really knowing. We could read how to like ask the questions and to do the whatever. And I feel like that's a really good people person skill. If
Yeah.
you can look at someone and feel them out, well, how can I, get here? What can I say to do that? Right. It's just so funny that we do that as kids, right? And then
Yeah.
it kind of bleeds in. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the way that my family has changed me is it gave me good traditional values. It made me someone who was a kind person, but from my dad, someone who takes no shit, which meant that I was never picked on, I never got bullied, none of that stuff, because that stopped very, very quickly. The moment it started, I kind of cut that off. And it also made me someone who was very reliable, because I saw, like, both from my mom, from my dad, like, if you say you're going to show up at this time, do that. If you say
Yeah,
you're going
that's
to do
also
this,
true
right?
too.
The only people that I were not timely for were my friends. And that's just because I was the worst. For if I told you I was coming at your house at 6, I was going to be there at 7:30.
Yeah.
And that was it was just the way that I did
And
it.
then we started
But
dating and you were like, "Yeah, I'll be there at 6." And literally you would get there at 7:30.
yeah,
Literally. Yeah.
and it was just one of those things where, like, I don't know, like, I didn't have a concept of time, but anytime, like, you needed a house moved, a thing or whatever, like, or show up to work, it's like you're always early, you're always boom, because it's just like, that other people are relying on you, which
Yeah.
is important.
My family was very reliable as well too. Like, you know, like you're gonna pick me up at school at this time. Okay, I'm gonna be there. Or like you know what I mean? Like there was a lot of reliability there as well too, which is really it makes it feel really like safe. And I
Mm.
think we're really blessed with like, how we grew up and family dynamics and also like the fact that our families get together, like get along together so well. I think that's also like really important too, right?
Yeah, that was the biggest blessing that I could ever ask for, is that when I met your parents, they were like such great people. And I was like, I'm going to have no problem communicating with them, being with them. I'm pretty sure your dad loves you more than, or me loves, he loves me more than he loves you, but that's okay, right? Because I'm pretty sure that my parents love you more than they love me. So it works both ways, you know? And just the way that they can get together and have communication. But I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing is our communication between our parents was always open, and it was
Yeah.
always truthful.
Yep.
I didn't have to hide anything from my parents. I wasn't trying to pull a fast one, and it always came from a place of integrity. So my parents, like your parents, just always had respect
Mm-hmm.
when speaking to us.
Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What are the values that that you feel you pulled from your family?
I think I kind of mentioned it, but I mean, like obviously a value is family. Like, like my parents valued like our relationship as a family. And I never felt like, unsafe or abandoned. Like, you know what I mean? Like I felt really, really safe, and like family was like, a big thing. So that was one of the values. What else? I think just like being punctual. You know what I mean? Like we were always like on time, and like I'll never like little things of like we'd be going to like my aunt's house for like a coffee, and it was like we said we're going to be there at 4, we'd get there at like 3:30. Like, you know what I mean? Like just like very punctual. Family is obviously a huge value. Honesty and communication. Like I remember as a kid, my dad would be like, we're having a family meeting, and we'd like sit down, and I can't even remember what these meetings were about, to be honest with you, but it was just always like important to like have communication and, kind of like share like
I
what we need to
love the
work
family
on.
meeting idea.
Yeah, I honestly, it was so long ago, I can't really remember, but it was like this is what we need to bring up, or like is there anything you need to say? Like I don't know, it was kind of like
I
I feel like it
love
was like,
that.
but
I
when I was
love that.
younger, I felt like it was like not a good thing. Like, oh, family meeting, like we need a meeting.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, like, I don't know whether or not it's needed, but like, I actually think that that's really great.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we never had a meeting, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we might ask like who's getting pizza, but like that,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. So, now, one thing as well too is we talked a lot about our immediate family,
Yeah.
and maybe we should, end off on this little bit. There are a lot of people who I'm sure listening who might not have a complete family, and family, at least to me, and then I can kind of get your description. Family to me is not like who your blood is, but who you are willing to bleed for, and who are you willing to have as a part of that inner circle. And I, and I believe you are as well too, are very selective with what that group looks like. And there's maybe a total of 15 people in what I consider like the inner family. And a lot of those aren't even people who are blood family. Like I have a best friend, Anthony, who I've had for 30 years. I maybe only speak to him twice a year, but his parents are like a second family to me.
Hmm.
I know his sister. We grew up together. I knew his mom. His mom took care of us and watched us for an eternity. His father, who just, recently retired and started another business. And like them to me, I have such a high level of closeness with them and such a high level of even relations, accountability. They helped grow me. And I
Hmm.
truly believe that you need multiple people, not just your immediate family, to help grow you and culture who you are.
Something that like I always say this, but it's one thing to say it and it's another thing to do it. But I'm always like after a get together with the cousins, I'm like, oh, it would be like we have such a good time all the time, and I'm always like, we should go away on vacation together, or like, we should go on like a weekend vacation or whatever. And it's always like that would be so much fun because I love my cousins. I love, like even my aunts and my uncles and whatnot. But I haven't really been like super, 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 super close with my family, like cousins and
Mhm.
things like that. Like obviously we'd get together for like, bridal shower and birthday party, and that's kind of like the extent to it. We never really did like, hey, Friday night dinner, like let's just go out for dinner. But that's something that I definitely, want to, like, we've had conversations on this before of like, let's just plan something, because everyone's usually always down. It's just like a matter of like taking that initiative to do it. But like booking a weekend getaway, or having people over, it's because that's like, friends. I mean, now we're making more friends as we moved and stuff, but family, I mean, that they've always been there for us,
Mhm.
so
Absolutely. Yeah. Who is there anyone outside of your immediate family that you would consider in your close circle?
no, honestly no, because again, like the friends that I've had, like I've never gotten super duper duper close with a friend.
Mm.
Like never. Like I have this one friend that I grew up with, and we were like Justin Bieber fans together. And I remember like she got Much Music tickets when Justin Bieber was there, and she invited me and she didn't have to. And then I got front row seat tickets to Justin Bieber concert and I invited her. Like we were like very close that way. And we've hung out a few times, like even with
Mm.
you. Um, but I've never had like a really, really intimate, close relationship with a friend that I would consider family. Like even at our wedding, I didn't invite any friends really,
Mhm.
except like a few, obviously like,
Yeah. I believe the people that we are building now as
yeah,
friendships are going to be very, very close
yeah,
because we started with a high level of accountability. We set a high level of values with them, which is
yeah.
really, really great. Out of people from high school, there are only two people that I still communicate with, right? And my brother. And yeah, so it's really not like having this very, very large circle from a family perspective, but really who is going to be that person that will pick up the phone call if you call them at 1:30 in the morning,
But
right?
it's so interesting because if we even look at our both of our parents,
Mhm.
like my parents never had friends over every single weekend or every Friday they didn't have plans. Like my parents, what they get so excited for is like a day trip or like a weekend getaway with just them two.
Mhm.
And then what do I get excited about? A weekend getaway with just you. Like my parents have like, one or two couples that like actually one of my mom's best friend is one that set up my dad and my mom, and like they're still friends today, and it's obviously been amazing. But like I never really saw my parents like going out with friends every weekend or having friends over every weekend. Like they were really never close with a bunch of friends either. And I think I just like assumed, like, you know what I mean? Like if you have a parent who's like going out every Saturday or every Sunday, like it's almost like that becomes like part of your,
Yeah.
your circle, whatever. Like you see those, you know, kids or whatever who are like so social, and it's like you look at their parents and like they're doing something every weekend as well too.
Yeah. But I also think too, you have to want to cultivate those relationships. Like
Yeah.
it's not easy to build any friendship, period, or
Yeah.
any type of relationship with family. Like it takes time, it takes effort. There's communication on
But
both
that's
sides,
the what
right?
it is. Like even for me, I'm like, I would love to like, we moved into our house and it's been like a year, and I'm like, I would love to have like family here, but I'm like, then I gotta message people and I gotta coordinate like it's just a lot of work sometimes.
It
Like,
is, yeah.
like but even like, I've been trying to make more of an effort, like even with my sister, like I said, like I've, been like texting her a little bit more and being like, hey, like have a great day, because I realized that like those messages really do go a long way. And I have this one cousin who always messages me, like even she messaged me, it wasn't our anniversary, but we had a reception on April 16th, and she messaged me, she's like, happy 1 year. And I'm like, she always messages me like
Mhm.
birthday or whatever it is. And it's a message goes a long way, and really just like not going out of your way, but really just making it a priority to, even send a quick message. Like my dad messaged me the other day. Remember, we were on a
Mhm.
walk and he's like, hey, like hope you're enjoying the beautiful sunshine, like have an amazing day. And I was like, whoa, like that was such a nice message. It really does make you feel good.
Yeah, absolutely it does. So we're
So
fortunate. We are very, very fortunate. But I think the when you grow up in a stable family, you develop a lot of stable values, and that makes it easier for you to pass on, right? But even if you didn't grow up in a stable family, you still have all you need to be able to grow a family of your own. And whether that's you have a kid, you put friends as a part of that family, like you can find reliable people anywhere as long as you're looking for that, if you're
yeah,
looking for the reliability.
yeah. So that's all for this episode of Getting Real with the Costas, all about family. We are definitely just very blessed, and our parents are always so supportive of us with whatever craziness that we get ourselves into.
Yep.
But yeah, we're definitely grateful. And, we definitely want to take a lot of the values that we've learned from our parents into, our family life one day as well, too. So,
Mhm. Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
And we have one child.
Oh my gosh.
No more
We're
than
going to have triplets.
no, 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 no,
It doesn't run in the
no.
family,
I'll
right?
sell the other two like goats.
Oh my gosh.
Love you guys.
All right. Bye.